You ever have that feeling, that really frustrating feeling? You've spent years, literally years, studying English. You know the grammar rules inside and out. But then, someone asks you a simple question and your mind just goes blank. Yeah, that was my life for a long, long time. So in this explainer, I really want to share my personal story of how I finally broke through that wall. How I went from just freezing up in conversations to actually feeling confident and, well, fluent. If you've ever felt that way, trust me, this is for you.
This quote, wow, this is exactly how it felt. My mind was honestly like a radio with terrible reception. I'd be standing there in a conversation, smiling and nodding on the outside, but inside, it was pure chaos. One word would come through perfectly clear, and then just static, white noise. I was missing huge pieces of what people were saying, desperately trying to put the puzzle together from the few words I did catch. It wasn't just frustrating, it was incredibly isolated.
If I had to pick just one word to describe my English back then, it would be this one: patchy. My knowledge was just full of holes. It was so uneven, so inconsistent. I could sit down and write a perfect 5-page essay, no problem, probably get a great grade. But ask me what I did over the weekend, I'd stumble, I'd hesitate. It was a mess. This is such a key word because it perfectly describes that huge gap between knowing about English and actually being able to use it. And that really gets to the heart of the problem, right? My English skills were built for the page. It was neat, it was organized, it followed all the rules. But the second I stepped into a real-life conversation, it felt like I was trying to use a map of New York to find my way around Tokyo. Spoken English with its incredible speed, its own rhythm, all the slang, it just felt like a completely different language, a secret code I just couldn't crack.
And here is a perfect example of that disconnect. My textbook taught me to say, "What are you doing?" But what I heard in real life was, "What you doing?" See, my brain was listening for 4 separate words, but my ears were hearing one single sound. It's like the words were all glued together, and by the time my brain managed to unglue them and figure it out, the conversation had already moved 5 steps ahead. That was the biggest challenge, that processing delay. So all of this, the static, the patchy skills, the disconnect, it all led to this one single overpowering fear: the awkward silence. Oh, you know that feeling. Someone asks you a question and a giant void just opens up in your mind. It goes completely blank. You can feel their eyes on you, waiting, and every single second of that silence feels like an hour. The panic just starts to rise up in your chest. That feeling, that's what I started to fear more than anything else. An awkward silence isn't just a pause, is it? It's an uncomfortable one. It makes you feel like you've failed. And my life honestly started to revolve around avoiding that feeling. I stopped raising my hand in class. I'd make up excuses to not go to lunch with my colleagues. I actively started avoiding native speakers, not because I didn't want to talk to them, but because the fear of that painful, deafening silence was just too much to handle. So there I was, right? Stuck. I was in this horrible cycle of fear and avoidance, and I was feeling pretty hopeless, like I would never, ever be fluent. But then something shifted, and I didn't find it in a textbook or in a classroom. I kind of just stumbled upon it. So what was this big secret that finally changed everything for me? And that phrase right there, to stumble upon, that's so important. It means you find something totally by accident. My big breakthrough didn't come from studying harder or memorizing more words. It happened one evening when I was just trying to relax, watching an American TV show with the subtitles on, just trying to escape my own frustration for a bit. It was a complete accident, a discovery I wasn't even looking for. And that was it. That was the breakthrough, the big light bulb moment. I finally realized I had been climbing the wrong mountain this whole time. I didn't need another grammar worksheet. What I needed was to learn the language that was actually spoken by real people, not the perfect language written in a textbook. I had to completely shift my focus away from the rules and onto the real music of everyday English conversation. This is why watching TV shows was such a game changer. I was finally learning everything in context. See, before, I would just have a vocabulary list with a word like tired. But then, I'd watch a character on a show come home from a really long day at work, and he'd throw his keys on the table, slump onto the couch, and sigh, "Man, I'm beat." All of a sudden, that phrase had a story, an emotion, a visual attached to it. It wasn't just a word anymore. It was real. And because of that, it's stuck in my brain.
Okay, so from this discovery, I built this really simple daily system for myself. Just 4 techniques. First was shadowing. I'd put on my headphones and literally echo what I was hearing, trying to copy the rhythm and the melody, the intonation of the speaker. That is so crucial for sounding natural. Second, the 3 phrases rule. Every single day, I would find just 3 new, useful phrases from whatever I was watching and make them my own. That way, my vocabulary grew with stuff I would actually use. Third, and I know this sounds a little weird, talking to myself. I would just narrate my day out loud to practice forming sentences without any pressure. And fourth, I forced myself to use context over translation. So instead of stopping to translate every single word in my head, I'd make myself guess the meaning from the situation. That really started forcing my brain to think in English.
But let me be super clear here. These techniques weren't magic pills. The real power, the secret ingredient that ties it all together, is consistency. This was not about some intense 5-hour study session on a Saturday that just leaves you exhausted. No, it was about showing up for just 15 or 20 minutes every single day. That slow, steady daily practice is what builds real momentum. It's like water carving its way through a canyon, bit by bit.
So why does that daily practice work so well? Well, it all comes down to muscle memory. Speaking a language is a physical act, right? By doing things like shadowing and talking to myself, I wasn't just learning words in my brain, I was physically training my mouth, my tongue, my jaw to make the sounds of English automatically. It's just like learning to ride a bike. At first you're wobbly, but eventually your body just knows what to do without you having to think about every tiny little movement.
And the results? They came so much faster than I ever could have imagined. Seriously, within just a few weeks, I felt a huge shift. Conversations that used to feel like this painful struggle, like trying to run through deep, thick mud, they suddenly began to flow. The words started coming to me more naturally, without that desperate, frantic search in my brain. The static in my head was finally starting to clear up. But the one moment I will never, ever forget, was when a native speaker I was just chatting with paused, looked at me, and said this: "Wow, your English sounds so natural." After all those years of feeling like a clumsy robot, of feeling so awkward and slow, hearing that one word, natural, it was everything. It was more than just a compliment. It was the ultimate proof that this whole new approach was actually working.
That one little compliment became my fuel. You know, just like fuel powers an engine, that little bit of positive feedback gave me this incredible surge of energy and motivation. It was the proof I needed that all the daily effort was paying off, and it made me want to practice even more. It completely turned practice from being a chore into something I was excited to do.
And ultimately, this whole journey led to the biggest transformation of all. It was a complete mindset shift. I finally let go of that impossible goal of perfection. I stopped obsessing over every little mistake I made, and instead, my new goal became connection.
I just wanted to share my ideas, to understand other people's stories, to build real relationships. And here's the amazing part. When your only goal is connection, the fear of making a mistake, it just kind of melts away. And that's when speaking finally becomes fun.
All right, so before we wrap up, let's do a super quick vocabulary recap. We talked about having patchy English, that feeling of dread from an awkward silence, the amazing power of learning in context, the real secret ingredient of consistency, and of course, finding fuel for your motivation. Here's my challenge to you. Pick one of these words and try to use it in a sentence today. It's a fantastic way to really make these words your own.
And now we come to the most important part. Because this isn't just about passive learning, it's about taking action. Fluency isn't something you find, it's something you build day by day. So I have one last really important question for you. Which of those 4 techniques will you try today? Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. Choose one. Give it just 10 minutes. That is all it takes to start. And remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's connection. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You just have to begin.